11-month-old Lila. Drew, you are not. Rayshawn, you are not.
Why would you do this? She loves you though. Why would you do this?
She's not my daughter. Why would you do this? Why would you cheat?
I didn't cheat.
Why would you cheat on me?
I didn't.
That's proof right there. DNA test. The vet is not my daughter.
Exactly. DNA test. What is that? It's a DNA test. I'm sorry. What? It's a DNA test. It's a DNA test. You're fucking wrong. I've been taking care for 3 years, and you're telling me and you don't. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. No. I don't want to.
This is why women don't want paternity fraud to be criminalized and paternity testing mandatory. Welcome to Manosphere Highlights Daily. In this video, we would like to take you on a journey that highlights the epidemic of paternity fraud and why we believe that paternity testing should be mandatory and paternity fraud should be a punishable crime. We also get into why women don't want paternity fraud to be criminalized. So let's go back to 1986, the first time DNA fingerprinting was used in a criminal case. There are specific parts of this case that we're going to highlight that will be the foundation of this video, starting with Richard Buckland.
Suspicion fell upon a 17-year-old youth who lived locally. He was arrested, and in a tape-recorded interview, he made a statement and was charged with Dawn's murder.
They had a prime suspect who confessed to one but not the other of the murders, and they were then stuck. They really wanted some independent line of evidence that would establish that this person was indeed guilty not just of the one murder, but of both murders.
We understood that he would be able, with the testing, to bring it down to one individual as opposed to a percentage of the population.
So we went into the analysis very skeptical. We did the extracting the DNA from all these samples. We went through the DNA profiling procedure, and the result that came through was extraordinary.
When the results came back, it was quite surprising, really, because, I mean, he eliminated Buckland from the murder of Dawn Ashworth, and we were forced to release him.
Those tests which were carried out did not implicate Mr. Buckland in the death of Linda Mann. The results of the tests indicate that a person, as yet unknown, was involved in the deaths of the two girls.
Richard Buckland became the first man to be acquitted by DNA technology. Keep this in mind. We'll come back to this later. Now, with this technology proving Buckland's innocence, the detectives decided to use this technology to catch the murderer.
The world's first DNA manhunt is underway. Thousands of men from the villages of Narborough, Littlethorpe and Enderby have this week been attending voluntary blood tests in an attempt to catch the killer of 2 Leicestershire schoolgirls.
Did you have any doubts about coming tonight?
Not at all, no. I think the person responsible might have.
All men aged between the ages of 18 and 34 have received a letter asking them to attend a screening.
They use the term manhunt, meaning an organized search for a person, especially a criminal, someone who commits a crime. Keep this in mind. Now, during this manhunt, something interesting happens. Let's read from The Guardian. It was a voluntary scheme and a few men declined, some saying they did not like needles, 1 or 2 saying they did not like police officers. But most of these men soon changed their minds. The horror at the crimes and the fear that the killer could strike again resulted in those with reservations coming under considerable social pressure. And that's exactly what the doctor ordered. Social pressure. Mandatory paternity tests and paternity fraud as a punishable crime will put a lot of pressure on women. Why? Because women carry a huge responsibility when it comes to sexual intercourse. Women are the gatekeepers of sex. Nothing happens without a woman's consent. Besides that, women are the ones that can get pregnant. So women decide who they have sexual intercourse with and how sexual intercourse takes place. Condoms, birth control pills, or good old-fashioned raw dog. Once again, nothing happens without her consent. Now, why would a woman have a problem with mandatory DNA testing?
If I'm in a committed relationship, I'd want to believe that, like, my husband was father of my child. And I'd picture it to be some type of degrading if they're like, take this to make sure it's yours.
You requesting DNA, first of all, this is a very gendered question. Right? For me specifically, there's no way if my man came up to me, I wouldn't feel some type of offense.
Can you take a DNA test? I mean, are you kidding me? Like, what is this? Like, what did we go down the aisle for? What did we say those vows for? If you're not gonna automatically know that this baby is yours.
I think that y'all want this to be mandated because of a conversation you are not strong enough to have with your girl.
So basically, it's a trust issue. It's about ego. When you tell a woman that you want a DNA test, you are basically saying that you don't trust her. Well, you have every right not to trust her. There are between 5.3 million and 7.7 million minor children that are victims of paternity fraud in the US. Studies attempting to show the percentage of men in divorce cases who challenge paternity, who turned out not to be the father, have turned up figures ranging from 25% to 30%. This is 30% of men that actually take the paternity tests, not all men. What do you think is going to happen if paternity tests are mandatory? At first glance, the numbers of men not being the biological father would go up. However, making paternity testing mandatory will give women a heads up, and they will cover up their tracks. This would be a bit harder because of the abortion laws, but women will find a way to avoid responsibility because that is their kryptonite. That's why women don't like the concept of mandatory paternity testing, because it will expose them as cheaters, betrayers, liars, irresponsible, selfish, disloyal, and most definitely not the better half. This reputation is a no-go for women, because a man must believe that his woman is worth investing his time, money, and energy. He must believe that she is loyal and reliable. A relationship needs trust to be part of the foundation.
You know, at the time, I hear a lot of people saying, like, where's your loyalty? Like, how could you do that? You know, I had no loyalty for Anthony. I really didn't. And again, I wasn't thinking about everybody else in the situation. I was only thinking about myself. I mean, I really didn't have loyalty for Anthony.
The numbers are staggering and prove that a lot of women have this selfish mentality. They do not think about everybody else when they are in the moment, but that same moment leads to pain, torment, and the destruction of everybody else, including the child, long term. It's embarrassing how the mainstream media and Western society in general lets these women off the hook like that. It's not a coincidence that men are opting out. Men choose to go their own way, because women can get away with this foolishness and men have to pay anyway.
When a divorced dad was ordered to pay child support for a child who isn't his.
A Tulsa man is ordered to pay child support for a baby that's not his.
A First Coast man is in a fight with the state of Florida over court-ordered child support for a child he has proof isn't his.
It's happening to men across Michigan. They are being forced to pay child support as dads by default.
Doesn't matter. If the men can prove the children are not theirs, Michigan law makes them pay anyway.
This is where we go into why women don't want paternity fraud to be a punishable crime. What is paternity fraud? Paternity fraud occurs when a woman intentionally names a man to be the father of her child, when she knows he's not the biological father, often for the purposes of collecting child support, or the mother does not want the alleged father to know about another man.
His ex-wife had given birth. She had gotten pregnant during their separation by another man. Legally, she was still married to Joe. Court papers clearly acknowledge the baby is not Joe's, but Albert Bush's, and that Bush had established a personal, financial, or custodial relationship with the child. The court ordered medical expenses be split between the biological parents. But the Friday before Father's Day, Joe got a letter in the mail from a friend of the court.
I thought, my God, this is hilarious. It's Father's Day weekend, and here's the biggest joke that I think I've ever had played on me transpiring right now.
The letter said he owed $8,500 in back child support plus medical expenses for a baby his ex-wife had with another man.
When there is proof that a man is not the biological father, this means he is a victim of emotional and financial abuse. It doesn't stop there. Paternity fraud has many victims, including the biological father, the families of both men, and most certainly the innocent child. Just like Richard Buckland, the DNA evidence should free the biological father from his responsibilities. It should be his own choice if he wants to continue to support the child and its mother, because it was not his choice to father a child that is not his.
I was the father by default.
These 4 men came to the 7 Action News studios to raise awareness. You could become dad by default. There are a couple ways it happens. Pastor Edward Mack says his previous wife had 3 children. He loved them as his own. Then he realized 2 of them were not biologically his.
You must have been so heartbroken.
Kim, it was a hurting thing. I don't even really want to talk about it because it brings tears to my eyes. Sorry for getting teary-eyed.
Pastor Mack says the betrayal led to divorce. He was shocked when the judge told him because he was married, he became dad by default. He had to pay support for another man's children.
Let her pay for him. Let her get the man she laid down with to pay for him. He goes free.
I never even slept with her. I got a lawsuit when I was young, and she basically just said, that's the money I'm gonna get, and she got it.
Reginald Whitlow, Anthony Sims, and Carnell Alexander have similar stories. They say women named them out of nowhere.
As for the woman, she committed a crime, and she should be punished for it. Women use men for financial security, and having a man's baby could secure the bag. Brittany Renner. Women are fully aware of the benefits. Social security benefits from a deceased or disabled parent. Inheritance. Veterans benefits when applicable. Health and life insurance benefits. And we all know women don't use child support for the child only. Brittany Griner's story is a great example of what happens when you don't punish crime.
And with the possibility of 10 years in a Russian prison, this afternoon, calls to free Brittany Griner are growing louder. Inside a Russian courtroom, WNBA basketball star Brittany Griner admitted to drug possession. In February, the 31-year-old traveled to Moscow to play for a Russian team. She was detained at an airport after 2 vape canisters with cannabis oil were found in her luggage. Prosecutors say the cartridges contained a significant amount of cannabis oil, though investigators measure it at 0.02 ounces. In pleading guilty today, Griner told a judge, "There was no intent. I did not want to break the law." Her lawyers share more.
She said that it was unintentionally brought to Russia because she was in a hurry as she was packing.
Western women are not held accountable for their actions. Why do you think she would behave in a different country? Men statistically receive harsher prison sentences than women who commit the same crimes. Women are aware of this. That's why Brittany Griner's eyes are popping out, because she's getting a taste of reality. They will not let her off the hook just because she is a woman and part of the rainbow community. She committed a serious crime that she did not take seriously, because in the States, money talks, status talks, and politically correct politics are favored. With one of those expensive attorneys, she could get away with a slap on the wrist. But she is not home, and she realized she made a big mistake. I'm not saying money and status in other countries won't help, but their system works differently. Russian culture is different from American culture. Norms and values differ. This is why men take their talents overseas, because the system is different overseas. And that's why you don't bring your foreign wife back home, because she will adapt to the Western system and get the same mentality of the modern Western woman. What is the sentence for fraud? After someone has been found guilty of fraud, the court is left to determine an appropriate sentence. While the criminal code spells out maximums, 2 years less a day and a $5,000 fine for fraud below $5,000 and a maximum of 14 years in prison for above $5,000. There are many other variables the court weighs before imposing a sentence. In my opinion, if DNA testing is mandatory, a woman can get away with a fine, lose custody, and the non-biological father does not have to pay child support if it's immediately made clear at the birth of the child who the biological father is. If this is not the case after 300 days and the birth certificate is signed by the non-biological father, jail time should be added to the sentence, because paternity fraud is not something to mess with. Once again, 30% of men that actually take the DNA test, not all men, turn out not to be the biological father. Who knows what the actual numbers are, but these numbers are more than enough to give a man every right to protect himself at all times. This is why women don't want paternity fraud to be criminalized, because a lot of them would go to jail. Manosphere, we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.